Rachel Rose Lucky. I'm a board member of the Rampart Village Neighborhood Council, although I'm not here representing them today. I am in support of this motion, and on the surface, this bill is at least as bad as SB 827, which this council so appropriately opposed a year ago. So also, I want you to know that you probably know that SB 50 is moving very quickly through our state legislature. So I would urge you to do your study as quickly as humanly possible so that a position by the city can be taken. And you know, this bill is just really just the same as SB 827, but even worse, because it incorporates density-rich areas and school areas. So I really hope that you put this report through as quickly as possible and get this to the City Council as quickly as possible for a vote. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Maureen Levinson. I'm a citizen of Los Angeles. I live in Bel Air. I'm with the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. I just wanted to thank Councilman Koretz deeply for putting forth this motion. We support it, and for all the reasons that have been stated previously. I hope the study will really focus on the consequences of this SB 50, and one thing, I'm an EMT. I worry about the infrastructure for all this extra density too. How does our emergency services work as one of the many aspects that would be affected? Thank you.
Susan Hunter, Coalition to Preserve Los Angeles. I find it fascinating that we're concerned about the state trying to mandate and tell us what to do and undermine our needs. And yet as a city, we have no problem doing that to our communities. We have a chance under AB 1505 to stop incentivizing the production of affordable housing and instead start backing up our community plans and start backing up the CRA plans and mandating it. We can simply turn around and tell the state we haven't even had a chance to explore this yet because we are finally not barred from mandating the production of affordable housing in our communities. So we should see this as an opportunity to say not only do you need to back off, but we have a chance to do better. We have a chance to back up the communities and the neighborhoods who said for a long time, here's what we do want to see, and make that actually a reality. And I hope that's what you all will consider today and support Koretz's motion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Emma Howard, Senior Planner for Councilmember Ryu. I'm here to read the letter that council members submitted today. I write it today in support of Councilmember Koretz's motion instructing the Planning Department to report back on potential impacts to Los Angeles from Senate Bill 50, currently pending before the State Senate. I believe SB 50 raises even more questions than SB 827, and a detailed study by the Planning Department will help this council and our local state senators and assembly members fully understand the impacts of this bill. In general, I have concerns about the trend of statewide bills that limit local zoning controls. We need to know if there is evidence that this method works to create the right mix of needed housing. In my district, despite growing numbers of projects using SB 1818 and our local transit-oriented communities incentives, rapid overall displacement continues. I would like to know if other approaches, such as reforming Costa-Hawkins, increasing affordable housing funding, and creating rent subsidies, can do more to help us retain and grow our stock of affordable and workforce housing. I look forward to obtaining the Planning Department's study as soon as possible to help inform our choices around housing affordability and this bill in particular. Sincerely, David Ryu, Council Member, District 4. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, do we have any comments from planning on this matter?
No, we just have to answer any questions if you have any, but we'll be presenting this information as this goes through the process to get the motion approved.
All right, Mr. Blumenfeld.
Just for planning, how quickly can this assessment be done? Could it be done in 30 days? And are there enough details about the bill available to actually complete the analysis? Are there items that haven't been defined yet that we need to define?
Well, I'll let, we have Arthur Varma and Matt Glasney from City Planning Department here. I would say that there's still a lot of parts of this bill that are not defined, and so they can get into some of the details. So there will be some challenges in terms of the analysis, in terms of how much detailed analysis we'll be able to do, because they just haven't defined major parts of the bill. But there are parts of the bill that they have defined that we can give you very specific information about. For example, they have defined the transit, where the transit stations are, where there would be the state mandated upzoning. I'd like,
There's probably enough stuff to find where we could get analysis for us to take a position, but it'd be good to know also what those outstanding issues are.
Arthi Varma, Department of City Planning, would be happy to complete the report back and give some detailed analysis given the definitions that are in the bill. We do think we can report back within 30 days.
There's one major area which is not defined, and I forget what the title of it is this
Jobs
area,
rich.
the jobs-rich area, which has not been mapped, and nor has it really been defined really with any manner that we can figure out where these places would be. So I think you heard some speakers mentioning that, and I would say that, yeah, that's a very undefined part of the bill, but we'll come back and give you as much information of the defined parts. We've done a lot of mapping already, so we've mapped. We've been working on this since the last time the bill came out last year, so we've already got ahead of the game. We've mapped a lot of the transit areas. We've mapped our historic resources as it relates to the transit areas, and so we already have a lot of information that's ready to go.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll approve this item and look forward to a report back. All right, now we'll hear from our planning department on item number 1. Mr. Mejia?
Yes, Mr. Bertoni's report.
Thank you, Chair Harris-Dawson and members of the committee. Vince Bertoni, Director of Planning. Just a few items. We presented to our City Planning Commission last week the update. The state of California did a comprehensive update to its to the California Environmental Quality Act's guidelines, which includes the CEQA thresholds. And so it's probably the most comprehensive update that the state's done since the 1990s. And it really has, the goal behind it was to both modernize the checklist in terms of the thresholds, and that determines, the thresholds in the checklist determines, in essence, helps to determine whether a project is exempt, goes through a negative declaration or an environmental impact report, and it basically shapes these documents as well as their mitigation. So these are state mandated guidelines that we sent to the Planning Commission as an information item. And it was really, the updates were both to modernize and also to really focus around climate change and about making sure that development, which is more compact and more infill, is treated differently than those that are actually going to areas which will use our natural resources, such as our mountains and our rivers and our valleys. So we presented that to the Planning Commission last week, and those will be going into effect later this month. We also gave another change to CEQA that the state has put forward is changing how we measure transportation impacts. Right now, through the standard through California's level of service, and that is abbreviated as LOS, and that has to do with the delay you experience while you're driving or sitting in a car. And that is, the state is mandating that we move off of that to something that is more related to what your experience is in terms of how easy it is to get around the city, which would be vehicle miles traveled. And so they're mandating that by next year that everyone move from level of service to vehicle miles traveled. We've been working on this for a while. This also lines up with climate change goals, because what this does is it encourages development to be more proximate to transit. So that was reviewed by our Planning Commission and recommended for adoption, and that will be coming to this committee as well as the full City Council later, because the CEQA guidelines and thresholds that were adopted, we put forward as the department in terms of the department that adopts. All the departments will adopt those separately. The City Council will be adopting the new transportation measurement from level of service to vehicle miles traveled. So those are two things that I wanted to make this committee aware of. Also, we handed out our last quarterly housing report, and this is a report we've been doing just to monitor the city's progress towards meeting its housing goals. This is our third report, so this actually captures the third quarter of last year as well as the year end for last year. And so some of the highlights you can see in the housing progress report is and if you look on the very first page, you can see how the number of general plan and zone changes, and the bottom of the chart at the bottom has decreased dramatically. You can see what has taken its place is applications going through the transit-oriented communities incentives. In fact, about 30% of our applications last year were through the TOC program, or transit-oriented communities. We've seen somewhat of a decrease in applications going through the density bonus process. So this report not only tracks transit-oriented communities and density bonus, it also tracks our accessory dwelling units, and you can see that program is still going strong since the state program. We have housing proposed through the accessory dwelling unit program has increased. 2017 year end was 3,800 units, whereas the year end of 2018 was 5,400 units roughly, so that was a 42% increase from the previous year. And then we also have progress towards our unpermitted dwelling unit ordinance, and that was the ordinance that allows units within multifamily buildings that were initially not approved legally to legalize them, provided they meet certain health and safety regulations. So in each of these, we wanted to just track the overall progress of housing, the progress for our transit-oriented communities, our density bonus, our accessory dwelling units, as well as our unapproved dwelling unit. And we also map them so you can get a sense of how they're being, where these various projects are getting developed within the city. This report is online, and it's already been online. And we're going to be printing more of these later next week for distribution. But I just wanted to give you an overview of the report and answer any questions if you have them. And you may see that we've reflected some of your previous comments in the report and some of the information that we've been putting forward.
Thank you. Questions, comments, members? Mr. Blumenfeld?
I'm looking at the accessory dwelling units. What do you attribute the densities of the different locations?
So
Common feature, yeah.
great. Thank you for the question. It's so the blue is the lower density going through the green, which is the higher density, and you see that some of those densities in the valley. We think some of those are, part of it is the arrangement of the buildings in terms of some of the newer units of the homes. I believe we're about 80% of the ADUs are conversions of existing space or additions to existing homes versus 20% are ground up. So there is that provision of it. If you look in the areas where you see the higher density, I think you'll also find areas that were probably predominantly post World War II development. So the way the homes are arranged on the lot, it's a little bit easier to do add on to the homes or to put a new 2-unit behind it, because the lots are shallow and wide instead of narrow and deep like they were before the war.
Because they're not the traditional big lots.
Exactly.
I know where the big lots are in my area, at least, and that's not.
It's not it. I think it's a little bit more of the shape of the property. The other thing to keep in mind, and I think we've talked about before, is that the Department of Water and Power has been careful about allowing for conversions of garages that are located below overhead utility lines. So a lot of the city, if you look on this side of the hill, a lot of the predominant development for single-family homes is a detached garage in the very back along the rear property line, and there is usually a utility line above it, so that's a difficult one to put them in. And if you look at the areas in the valley, you probably have a garage that's a little bit closer to the street that's easier to convert. So there's a lot of those are more of I think the characteristics that we've been seeing. I don't know if Matt Glesney has any other. Matt and I talk about this all the time, where this is coming from, and I think that's kind of where we've landed.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Others? All right. We'll accept the director's report. Thank you so much. Lots of progress and lots more to go. That takes us to item number 3. Mr. Mejia?
Item 3, Councilman, these are 3 reports on file from the Housing Department, the CAO, and the CLA relative to the expenditure guidelines as relates to the linkage fee ordinance.
All right. I think we're going to hear from Mr. Spear, who I saw, but I don't see now. There he is.
Good afternoon. Sean Spear, Assistant General Manager at the Housing Department. I'm joined by Claudia Monterosa, who is our Policy Director. Claudia is going to take you through the steps leading up to this point today, and we will also be available if we want to spend a little bit of time diving into the results of the stakeholder process and the initial recommendations on the preliminary expenditure of the dollars, and also highlight some of the changes that were identified in the CLA report that we would ask that you consider as part of your consideration today. So I'm going to turn it over to Claudia, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, Claudia Monterosa, Housing Department. The Housing Department issued its expenditure program fee for the linkage fee in October of 2018, and since then we did have a housing committee in which our report and the recommendations from the CLA were adopted. I wanted to walk you through very quickly that the subject of our report back was on the establishment of the Housing Trust Fund, which is a separate account that was established as part of the linkage fee. As you may recall, there were two ordinances, and this one is the one that establishes the Oversight Committee as well as where the funding will live. The eligible uses for the linkage fee are for new production of affordable housing, acquisition and preservation of housing, and home ownership. We actually had a fairly robust public process in January through June of 2018, and there was substantial consensus on the goals that were presented, including prioritizing rental and home ownership opportunities, supporting more underserved income levels, and mixed development opportunities, and to really engage in some demonstration projects such as innovative accessory dwelling unit type projects and any other type of program that would prove innovative in nature. So the idea is that the department would create some sort of notice of funding availability for that program. I also want to update you that we are indeed collecting funding. It was very slow in coming in. We are now at the 2/3 of the linkage fee, and the full amount will be in place starting June 19th of this year. But as of February, we have a little bit over $3 million collected in our trust fund, in the impact fund. And I think if there are any more specific questions in regards to the expenditure plan, the priorities, or any other specifics, we will be happy to answer those, but we would love to have the adopted report move forward.
Excellent. Question. So I'm having a problem with the public comment. Did people sign up to speak on item 3? I guess I'm not having a problem. There's no speakers. All right, there we go. All right, so we'll start questions and comments for the committee. We'll begin with Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Just one question. You said that 2/3 of the fees are in. Is that projected budget fees or 2/3 of those that are outstanding that we know are due?
I'm sorry. The affordable housing linkage fee was adopted in a phased-in approach. So the first third of the fee, of the total fee per geographic area, was effective June of last year. The 2/3 of that full fee were effective December of last year, and then the full-on fee, if you're in a geographic area that's a high-cost area, it will be $18 per square foot on a residential for the residential fee. For the commercial, it's $5. So you will be paying at this point 2/3 of that fee.
Right. So that's the stuff that we know is going on. Have there been any projects that have dropped out? Say we're just not going to pay the fee and.
There was a fairly robust activity before the fee took effect, and what we're seeing right now is an increase in the revenue. So from December to February, we've seen a substantial increase. Just in the month of February, we received about $800,000 in linkage fee funds.
I would just quickly add that there was a run-up in terms of applications for permitting prior to the fee being enacted, but the fee is actually collected when permits are issued. So, relatively speaking, you can assume that once permits are issued and they've paid their fee, they're going to move forward with the construction.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for your work that you're doing on this. This is really coming a long way, and it really makes a big deal, makes a big difference. The CLA report references that HCID estimates that approximately $52 million in revenue for 1920 and $104 million in revenue beginning 2020. Considering the fact we've only collected about $3 million to date, how likely is it that we're going to be able to reach these projections? Just curious.
So the initial projections were based upon the assumption that the full fee was going to be enacted. So the fact that there was actually a run-up in terms of applications attempting to get in before the fee was enacted affected that projection, as well as the fact that the fee is only being implemented on a phased-in basis.
In addition, that expected revenue was based on development activity over the course of 10 years, and we took the average of that, and that was before we actually settled on how the fee was actually going to be implemented. So now we would have to revise that and let the funds come in now that we're in the middle of the collecting of the fee.
So the $52 million is really closer to $25 million then, or what, $10 million?
Probably half, but we would probably have to go back to the consultants to get an actual number.
Okay. One other question, Mr. Chairman. And again, HCID, I commend the efforts to try to incorporate innovative approaches to addressing these challenges. I very much like the tiered approach that you discussed. Considering the fact that current programs that you have in place are such high demand, and often there's a long wait list, like the managed pipeline, the LIPA, the MIPA. Have you already thought about a threshold or dollar amount that could be allocated for these kinds of programs? Specifically, the MIPA, for example, seems to always be underfunded, and the wait list in the managed pipeline is a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. I'd like to know how much the department intends to allocate to these programs that are in such high demand.
Yes, thank you for the question. In part, that was a basis of our thinking in terms of how to use the funds as they start to ramp up. And in part, we looked at the fact that there's a reality that we have a managed pipeline process, and we have more projects that are attempting to compete for our limited dollars than there are dollars available. Also, particularly in our moderate income homeownership program, that is always oversubscribed as well. So the initial thinking was that as we described a tiered process for funding additional programs as more dollars become available, but that in the early stage would be emphasizing using those limited dollars to augment existing programs that are oversubscribed, namely the managed pipeline and specifically the moderate income purchase assistance program for homeowners. So going forward then, and particularly what we're assuming is that once we would possibly receive as many as $50 million in annual receipts, we would then start to roll out some of the newer programs, primarily focused around preservation, opportunities for mixed income support and development, and having greater ability to preserve existing extremely low-income housing as well as support new extremely low-income housing. The stakeholders identified that as a key goal in line of basically being able to try and prevent homelessness by providing more extremely low-income units going forward. And also the fact that, there's a great number of folks that's very difficult for them to achieve homeownership in high-cost areas such as ours. And so being able to have some changes to the moderate income program that might be able to link that program up with anti-gentrification and anti-displacement opportunities that we do through our other programs, we think we can achieve a greater bang for the buck in terms of using those dollars, not only just to assist individual homeowners, but also be able to lock in some low and moderate income families and communities that may be facing gentrification pressures.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, when it's appropriate, I'd like to request a report back on how we can prioritize the existing 3 programs that HCID currently has in place to meet the demand, and how we address the backlog of projects and programs.
Excellent. So that's an amendment?
As that's appropriate.
All right.
Thank you.
Phil?
Great, thank you. To follow up on a couple of the questions that my colleagues have asked, and you're talking about the moderate income housing. according to the HCID, we're substantially behind on meeting our affordable housing goals per the state mandate, and that's especially true in terms of the moderate income housing. So how does the expenditure plan actually address the moderate income housing?
So the initial thoughts that came out of the stakeholder process was to support opportunities where we can layer in moderate income units in an otherwise market rate project. So in essence, buying in affordability into some of the existing housing activity that we're seeing in the market as a whole. So incentivizing private market rate developers to take on some moderate income units alongside extremely low income units as well. So they get both as part of that practice. So that was what we loosely termed as an 80-20 plus program. It would also take advantage of taxes and bonds that the city could issue on behalf of those projects to lower their lending costs for the project. So that was one piece that was identified fairly early on. The other, as I mentioned before, was being able to provide additional funds through our down payment assistance programs, particularly on the moderate income side, where we can take advantage of home dollars for the low income purchase assistance program, but those dollars are not eligible for the moderate income program. So it does need additional resources from others, such as potentially the linkage fee that could help us support families trying to buy in that sort of income strip.
Councilman John Wickham with the CLA's office. One thing that we would suggest is that the governor has proposed some new programs for moderate income housing, and it would be appropriate to monitor the development of state legislation in this area to determine whether our housing programs should be modified in a way to maximize access to those new state programs. So I think that will be another factor that comes into play over the course of the next 6 months to a year to see how this program that you've created can mesh with the state to bring more resources in specifically for moderate housing.
Yeah, I would just quickly add that it was a fairly large group that participated in this process. We really started off kind of turning the process open, and we contacted over 1,300 individuals were involved. There were 100 different organizations and individuals that actually participated in the meetings that were established. Very early on in the process, we established sort of common goals amongst the disparate interests in here. There were folks that were interested in home ownership, others that were interested in rental, ability to support and homeless prevention, amongst others. But they came around a sort of common set of values, and one of them was really leveraging these dollars to the maximum extent possible. So we would definitely expect that we would be trying to take advantage of other state and federal resources and private resources as well to augment the programs that would be created.
Yeah, I hope so, because the missing middle is a real issue for our teachers and firefighters and other folks, and in as much as we can leverage money, that would be great. I wanted to follow up also on the fee collected question that both my colleagues so far have mentioned. When did originally we were talking about this thing as $100 million a year. That's what we were voting on. Then now I'm looking at the predictions are 50 per year. And then when we actually come down to it, we're, as you said, about $3 million, which, yes, we haven't had the full fee yet, but even if we're getting half of the fee, it should be a heck of a lot more than that. So are there updated projections in terms of, for the remainder of 2019, of what we might see?
No, not at this point.
And is there any other rationale for why that number is so radically different?
Councilmember Kevin Keller, City Planning. Just to add to the departments at the table, this number, obviously we look to our housing department as the expert, but not surprising to the planning department, because again, this is not a stabilized year yet. When applications come in, they were grandfathered as of the date they applied. That was part of the broad grandfathering that was done. So any application that came in before the effective date, and there was quite a few, are still working through our system. So the majority of multiple family, single family that is in our building and safety system or in our planning system still is exempt from the linkage fee. For example, at our upcoming planning commission meeting, we have some very large projects that because they filed within the last year, they're also exempt. So we don't anticipate the full application of the pipeline to happen probably for an additional year and a half after that point. That coupled with the fact that we had a scale up was there. So I don't want to downplay that or trivialize it. It's a significant change, but The stabilized year probably is still about a year and a half out, although the receipts are coming in at this time.
Okay, and has the oversight, thank you for that. Has the oversight committee been formed, and have they met?
No, not yet.
Okay. And
so in part, that would be part of the recommendations here is to hire the staff necessary to start to design the new programs, as well as to staff essentially the operations related to the fee, which one of the positions, the housing and economic planning analyst, would be the one that would essentially begin the work of pulling together the oversight committee.
And there's going to be an analysis of the staffing needs to flesh out these programs?
Yes. So each individual program is brought forward will identify its staffing and admin needs.
Okay. And there was in the document talked about 15% for admin. What does that actually go to?
Yes, and that's an overall number. Different programs as brought forward will have exact amounts in terms of their admin costs and needs. It's anticipated that some programs will cost less than others, but the overall number for the program is up to that 15%.
Okay, so it's an up to, because I'm hoping that we can scrub that, because that's a huge number.
Yes.
And so if it's an up to per program, then that feels a little better than the way I was reading it, which was it was going to be on an average of 15%.
Yeah, it's an average authority for the, and John, you can talk a little bit.
I was just going to say, again, the role of the Oversight Committee would help review that admin cost. The Oversight Committee is comprised of the CLA, the CAO, the Mayor's Office, the General Manager, Housing Department General Manager of the Planning Department. And so I think you would see that body take a real hard look at those numbers to make sure that any recommendation to you for funding is fair to the staffing needs for the programs.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blumenfield. I wanted to join my colleagues in asking questions about how we're going to spend the money. It seems as if we're on track, or the pieces are in place to collect the linkage fee, and it'll take, it sounds like, 2 or 3 years for that to settle out. One program we didn't mention, we talked about some of the more mature programs, but one of the newer programs is our ADU program. I wanted to ask you all about that in relation to this. I have a concern that because it's newer, it might miss the boat altogether, and so I'm curious as to how you all are thinking about that in relation to these other programs.
This is Kevin Keller. I see everyone looking to planning, or maybe the mayor's office to comment on that.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to add to the conversation. My name is Amanda Daflos. I'm the director of the innovation team here for the city, and the program that you're asking about is the ADU program. Sort of building on the work that I think was discussed this morning with regards to the increase in the number of ADUs. One of the things that this talks about is actually incentivizing homeowners to continue to build ADUs and take the opportunity to do that, and then encourage homeowners to house those that are low income or potentially at risk of losing their homes. The city received a $1 million grant, and so this additional program this additional funding would build on that $1 million. But that would be how this would be spent.
So I guess the question I'm asking, thank you for that. That's
Sure.
Clarifies particularly what we're talking about in particular. I guess my question is, where is it in the queue? So we talked about all the programs that are ongoing, and they're, sort of our managed pipeline, for example. The minute the money's available, you can just put it there and it rolls. And I'm trying to imagine how this program will fit into that configuration.
Yes, so the assumption is that as a new program, but essentially the mayor's office has gotten a head start on their work in terms of designing the program as well as fundraising for it. I think the assumption is that those efforts would carry forward, and that the first $1 million being available through the fee receipts would be used to help support that program alongside the others that are existing programs.
The only thing I would add is I think the thing that lots of people are excited about is we have a waiting list of people that are already interested in participating in this program. We've done no advertising. It's simply by sheer nature of the fact that there was a fair bit of press that the city got around winning that $1 million grant for the idea to do this. And so with just that out there, we have a waiting list that the money that would come into this program, assuming that everybody qualified and would be approved, which we can assume that won't happen, but we'd already be oversubscribed.
Sure, well, I can imagine we would be. And when do we expect to be live with that program, actually implementing the program?
So as a pilot, the goal would be that this summer, the program application would be available, and then the first wave of people could come into the program this fall, somewhere around this fall.
Fall of 2019.
Fall of 2019.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank all of you. So, Mr. Mejia, we've got a series of instructions along with an amendment from Mr. Price that is before us now. If you can
Sure.
serve up what's under consideration.
Mr. Price requested the issue of backlogs to be addressed and to prioritize 3 programs. And specifically, I am reading something that was just handed to me from Mr. Price. It says, I would like to request a report back from HSID on how we can prioritize the existing 3 programs, which I just mentioned, the managed pipeline, the MIPA and LIPA, and for HSID currently has in place to meet the demand and address the backlog of projects and programs available to the city. So that addresses the backlog issue that Mr. Price mentioned. As far as the recommendations that you need to act on, do you want me to read them, Mr. Harris-Dawson, all of the recommendations embedded in the CLA report?
Yes.
Okay, so the action would be to concur with the January 24th Housing Committee recommendations and approve the recommendations delineated in the January 17th, 2019 CLA report with an amendment to recommendation number 3, which would authorize funding for a housing planning and economic analyst position in HSID's Public Policy and Research Unit rather than, I think it was previously noted as the Housing Development Bureau, and specifically the CLA recommendations for the council and the mayor to act are 9 recommendations. Number 1, to authorize the controller to establish a new account 43R680, denoted as HSID administration within the City of LA Housing Impact Trust Fund number 59T and appropriate $138,558 to this account. Number 2, to authorize resolution position authority for 1 management analyst, class code 9184, within HSID to be funded by the linkage fee revenue for fiscal year 2018-2019. 3, to authorize 1 existing vacant housing planning and economic analyst position at HSID to be funded at 50% of the position's salary with linkage fee revenue. This is the recommendation I previously noted that was amended by the Housing Committee. The position will be in the Public Policy and Research Unit. 4, authorize HSID to issue a request for proposal for an amount of $75,000 to be funded by linkage fee revenue if needed to procure data analysis necessary to expedite the development of innovative programs. 5, instruct HSID to convene the linkage fee oversight committee. 6, instruct HSID, the planning department, building and safety, and request city attorney to report to the oversight committee with a comprehensive staffing plan to administer linkage fee programs for fiscal year 2019-20 within 60 days. 7, instruct HSID to report to the oversight committee with a draft expenditure plan for fiscal year 2019-20, including a recommended funding amount for each subcategory within the rental new construction, rental preservation, homeownership, and innovations/new programs categories for its review within 60 days. 6, to instruct the CLA to prepare a resolution to adopt the linkage fee guidelines to fund administrative costs for fiscal year 2018-19. Upon council approval. 9, authorize the general manager of HCID or the designee to prepare controller instructions and make any necessary technical adjustments consistent with the mayor and city actions, subject to the approval of the CAO, and authorize the controller to implement these instructions. And I see in here also a friendly amendment to the CLA recommendations that upon the development of the ADU program and the parameters and guidelines, the funds allocated for the ADU pilot program be released in order to expedite the provision of housing opportunities for the homeless.
Excellent. If there's no objection, that'll be the order.
I just have one question. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. So we're authorizing one full-time position and one other position that's currently vacant at 50%, which is being paid by the linkage fee. So are we getting 1.5 people working on this then? That vacant position would be part-time working on this and part-time on other duties? Is that correct?
That is correct.
So now then the other question I had is the CEO recommended we wait until the budget process to discuss this, which starts in another month or so. And we're looking at really a much lengthier time frame before we start seeing the revenues begin to even get close to what was projected. Why is the urgency to fund these positions today?
Our thought was that of the 12 programs proposed by the Housing Department, 9 of them are new, and there are no guidelines for implementation of those programs. Staff are needed in order to implement or to develop those guidelines, to bring those back to you for consideration.
Preparatory to the budget.
The preparatory, yes. In addition, the Oversight Committee needs to be formed, and that requires staffing.
Good, Mr. Smith? All right, so ordered.
Okay.
Thank you. Go to item number 4.
Item 4, Councilman, this is an appeal file by Stephen Logan. They're appealing a previously approved EIR and the addendum to that EIR, as well as amendments to the Noho West Side Sign District in CD2.
All right. Members of planning staff are in place and ready to go.
Good afternoon. This is Melena from the Department of City Planning. The project before you today are proposed amendments to the Noho West Sign District, which became effective in 2017. In 2018, the applicant for the property proposed amendments to the existing sign district. On November 6, 2018, the City Planning Commission took actions on the proposed amendments requested by the applicant. They approved the relocation of 3 supergraphic signs on the interior of the site, and they removed 1 supergraphic sign. The City Planning Commission also denied amendments to reduce the takedown ratio for a sign reduction program. They also denied amendments to reduce the digital refresh rates. They also further modified the sign district by removing 2 exterior-facing digital displays along the freeway. On November 20th, the action was appealed by the applicant, requesting that the City Planning Commission's denial be overturned and that the digital displays be reinstated. Separate from the appeal, the Department of City Planning has submitted a letter of technical modifications to the file to reconcile some differences in the text of the ordinance with the approved signage in the ordinance exhibits. This is regarding the cinema marquee sign, the sign height, and the building H sign. We request that any action taken today on the appeal incorporate these modifications.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I believe we have a representative from Council District 2, Mr. Terosian.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. I'm Cla Report, Chief of Staff for Councilmember Paul Krikorian. We have been working closely with the community and the applicant and have come up with proposed changes and a compromise that is in front of you today. 70 copies have been distributed in this room. There's copies next to the agenda. Copies have been posted on all of the boards, and I believe all of you have copies also. This is currently an approved sign district that was voted on by this council and by the mayor. This is making technical modifications to bring the standards of this sign district in line with other approved sign districts in the city of Los Angeles. It's also lowering the total number of signs, shrinking the number of signs, and clarifying that some signs that are facing the school are for art components and shall have no commercial advertisement on them. This agreement is a much better situation for the surrounding community as opposed to the current sign district that is approved and signed in May of 2017. So I will go over some of the technical changes that have been distributed both to you and to the public prior to this. On page 4, we're defining what the interior signs are as signs that are not visible from outside of the existing sign district, just like any existing mall that is covered right now. They can do whatever signage they want inside the property without having to go through this process. We want to give, as long as it's not visible from outside of the property, we want to give them the same thing. We redefine on-site signs to require that the text of the name of the tenant or the location that the advertisement is on site is identified on the advertisement. This will make enforcement of on-site signs much more easier to be done with the city as opposed to if this was not included in there. We made a technical amendment for wayfinding signs in the parking structures. We created a 10-second refresh rate as opposed to the 1 minute. The typical refresh rate in most city sign districts currently is about 8 seconds. We went above that to a 10-second refresh rate. Again, advertising kiosks that are interior only don't have a takedown requirement as they don't in existing interior malls. All interior signs don't have a takedown requirement now, as mentioned earlier. We lowered the size of the super graphic signs that are outward facing from 800 square feet to 565 square feet each. We also lowered the digital display signs from almost 1,200 square feet to 925 square feet on the one facing the south side. And the developer on that one has also indicated that they're going to angle it in a way where it won't be visible from the residential communities. We've already addressed the interior signage component. Exterior facing signs will be on-site signs only, but we'll still have a takedown component of 5 to 1 for static and 10 to 1 for digital, something that actually we don't do on a typical basis for on-site signs, but we felt it was appropriate in this situation. The takedown shall be within a 1 mile radius as opposed to a 3 mile radius of the sign. And then we create a visual environmental improvement program. This creates a situation where if there are no signs that the company has to take down within that 1 mile radius, they will be allowed to do a fee in lieu, and in addition to that, they will be doing several community enhancements that they've already agreed to, including a maintenance agreement for the medians within that surrounding area in perpetuity of the signs being up. They will landscape portions of their property that they are currently not building on till such time that they pull the building permits to put the buildings on for those sections. We've also added an annual reporting where within 180 days of the passage of the erection of the signs, they will have to do a reporting, and then annually thereafter they will have to report to the planning department on their conformance to these conditions. Detailed conditions, again, have been passed out and have been posted on the boards here. Thank you, council members.
All right, thank you, Mr. Terosian. We'll accept those recommendations as an amendment. It's been distributed to all members. Okay, so we have the applicant and appellant in this case. Or just pick.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Bernafsky of Glazer Weil, representing the property owner, Merlone Geyer, who's also the applicant and appellant. And also with me is Stephen Logan from the company. We're excited to have this center under construction and opening by the end of the year. It's a new retail and mixed-use center at Laurel Plaza. It was idle for over 25 years following the Northridge earthquake, and we're moving forward. We support the recommendations of the council office, and we support the staff technical modifications. We want to thank them all for their hard work getting us to this, and we're just here to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Oh, yes, sir.
Oh, good afternoon, Chair. Just really quickly wanted to thank Councilman Krikorian's office and staff, as well as Mr. Cla Report, and we're 100% in support of the recommendation by them. Thank you.
Thank you. So noted. All right, we have a handful of people on the queue to give public comment on this matter. Dan Markell, Jill Stewart, Rachel Lucky, Patricia Dexter, Mickey Jackson, Susan Hunter, and Jorge Castaneda.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and council members. I represent hundreds of people who came to the LA Planning Commission public hearings about this issue and believed that when the LA Planning Commission denied these digital displays on the freeway edge, both in 2016 and in 2018, that our needs had been met. Unfortunately, looks like once again we will be overturned. Even the city attorney has backed the ruling of this LA Planning Commission because, according to them and according to my own research, there is 25% higher accident rate when these are placed roadside. And our developers, that we are so excited about their development, but these particular signs, they want 5 times more in digital refresh rates. They want 5 times less of taking down other signs. Please support us and support the LA Planning Commission's rulings. Thank you.
Can you do this for us? Can you tell us your name in the mic?
Patricia Dexter.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dexter. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Dan Markell. Thank you, Chairman and council members. Appreciate it. I'm speaking on behalf and support of the project. I'm an incoming tenant there, long-term resident of North Hollywood, Toluca Lake area. I personally invested a lot of money in the area. I love the area. I'm also an incoming tenant, as I mentioned, with a great new restaurant there. And it's really imperative for the amount of capital that we're investing in the community, which I love, to have signage. It's imperative to the success of the retail tenants there, especially where I am interior. The project is wonderful. There's an interior element there. No one can see my location from the streets going by. I think the signage, although I respect the opposing parts of this, would be beautiful. I think it'd be fantastic for the community, and I do understand safety risks that I can't comment on, but I'm in strong support of the signage request that the company's making.
Thank you.
Rachel Rose Lucky, as a board member of the Rampart Village Neighborhood Council, we border on the 101 freeway, and I believe that this sets a dangerous precedent of having these large illuminated signs and moving signs that are a very big distraction, I know, for me as a driver. So I would, oppose this this appeal, and please uphold the earlier findings. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
Jill Stewart, Executive Director for Coalition to Preserve LA. We've held about 75 workshops and public hearings and meetings over the last couple of years on a wide range of topics involving empowering communities, what people want from their communities, and so on. We generally ask one question again and again, and that is, how do people feel about large digital billboards and signage in their areas? It is an incredibly unpopular thing. People know it's just advertising, it's dangerous, it makes the neighborhood look like Las Vegas, it shines right through people's home curtains, and we did a little tiny study by going up to top of Topanga and found that you can see them clearly 4 miles away. You can read them clearly 4 miles away. I hate to bring this up again to this group, but almost everybody in power in Los Angeles has taken money from billboard companies, and we'd like to see you pull back from this decision and wait till some of the dust settles on the questions of undue influence. Thank you.
Susan Hunter, Coalition to Preserve Los Angeles, and a Hollywood resident. And unfortunately, as a resident of Hollywood, we have had to deal with several electronic and digital billboards coming in. They are the equivalent of a door-to-door salesman screaming in your face. They're loud, they're obnoxious, they're distracting for drivers who are already overwhelmed with having to navigate LA traffic and navigation software that's not always very friendly. I don't think it's asking too much to say that we should not be relying on digital billboards because they do have an undue influence. If we want to be a green city, if we want to be an environmentally friendly city, if we want to make it easier for drivers, then we need to consider what it is that we're throwing at them. And that's why we should just stick with some basic billboards that are easy to read, they're not going to be as distracting, and if we cut down on the lights on them, we'll succeed in our goal in being a better city. Thank you for your time.
Mickey Jackson, Coalition to Preserve LA. So we know billboards distract drivers, and that causes injury, and that causes death. We know billboards diminish people's quality of life. I don't think anybody here would deliberately rent an apartment that had a good view of billboards because they love billboards so much. We know that there's been undue influence exerted here in City Council. We've seen that from the FBI investigations. I too urge City Council, stop making these big decisions that it's very clear there's some kind of influence behind. Because why would anybody ever vote for a lot of things that we know have so many negative effects when there's only one positive effect of them? One positive effect. Money. Money to the developers, immense record of immense contributions to campaigns, and who knows what all. Maybe the FBI knows. I think it's very unwise.
Hi again, Jorge Castañeda with Coalition to Preserve LA. So there are countless human behavior studies that show drivers we're hardwired to notice bright, shiny objects, changing lights in their peripheral vision to anticipate additional motion. A couple studies I want to mention briefly. 2012, published in the Journal of Traffic Injury Prevention, concluded digital billboards grab and freeze the gazes of drivers for longer than a threshold previous studies have shown to be dangerous. That threshold is about 2 seconds. A well-regarded 2006 study by Virginia Tech for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration found that anything that takes a driver's eyes off of the road for more than 2 seconds greatly increases the risk of a crash. Nearly 80% of all crashes involve driver inattention just prior to the crash. Thank you.
All right, that exhausts our public comment speakers. Members, any questions or comments on this matter? Seeing none, it's the recommendation of the chair that we grant in part and deny in part the appeal filed by Mr. Logan on behalf of the applicant relative to modifications to the sign district conditions for the project located at 6150 Laurel Canyon Boulevard. And in addition to that, we have a set of instructions offered by Council District 2 that will serve as an amendment. Hearing no objections to those, yes, sir.
In addition, Councilman, if you would please request the city attorney to prepare the ordinance as to the amendments to the Noho West Sign District.
Excellent. I'm making such a request. Hearing no objections, that'll be the order. Takes us to item number 5.
Councilman, item 5 is an appeal filed by Chris Parker on behalf of Venice Investors. He's appealing the action of the West LA APC, which overturned the Director of Planning's approval of the tentative track map and also the reversion of in the coastal zone in CD 11.
All right, Planning Department.
Good afternoon. My name is Julietta with the Department of City Planning. The items before you are a second-level appeal of a tentative tract map and concurrent coastal development permit. The project consists of a proposed reversion to acreage at 1656 Abbot Kinney Boulevard, affecting the Abbot Kinney and Venice Boulevard rights-of-ways, and would result in a 9.5-foot wide sidewalk on Abbot Kinney Boulevard, a 20-foot wide corner, and a 15-foot wide sidewalk on Venice Boulevard. The reversion would result in one lot with a total lot area of approximately 10,383 square feet. The project also includes minor site improvements to construct a new fence and new landscaping. No changes are proposed to the existing commercial structure and surface parking lot. The advisory agency and director of planning approved the tentative tract map and coastal development permit in September of 2017. Both decisions were appealed to the West LA Area Planning Commission. 2 appeals were filed, one by a member of the community and one by the applicant. The Area Planning Commission considered issues and concerns regarding the loss of public access and improvements for public access and granted the appeals filed by the community member at its meeting on December of 2017. The project applicant appealed the APC's decision, providing arguments that the proposed reversion to acreage would not affect public access to the Abbot Kinney or Venice Boulevard right-of-ways. In addition, a revised map stamp dated December 24th, 2018 was submitted for review. The revised map includes various easement areas on the Venice Boulevard frontage that allow for the preservation of 9 palm trees at the corner of the site, a portion for potential Metro bike share station, as well as a public street area easement to a depth of approximately 33 feet from the 15-foot wide sidewalk to allow for future public street access improvements. The revised map was distributed to city agencies, and while responses were received by multiple agencies, only the Bureau of Engineering provided modified conditions. Both the revised map and BOE's conditions have been submitted to the Council File Records. The planning letter is dated February 21st. City Planning did initially submit a letter dated October 25th, 2018 regarding a condition of indemnity. However, we ask that if the committee seeks to recommend granting the appeal, that this letter be superseded by any conditions of approval that would be adopted as part of the action for both cases. Planning staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you. We will now hear from Council District 11. I think Ms. Klein is here. Was here. Going to be after. Oh, not going to be Ms. Klein. Yes, sir.
Hi, Len Wynn, Senior Planning Deputy for Council Member Mike Bunn, 11th District. Here today on behalf of the Council Member to support planning staff findings before you today. The Council Member wants to commend both sides for working over many years to fashion today's compromise, which preserves public access in compliance with city plans and the Coastal Act. As such, Council Member requests approval of the report before you today. Thank you.
Excellent. We have a few public comment speakers on this matter. James Mures, Elisa Pastor, Alexandra Balajudis.
Before I begin to speak, just 1 second, I have 2 procedural requests. The first one being, can the neighborhood council have enough time, which would be to pass the 19th of this month, to be able to enter a community impact statement?
No, I think the time for that has passed.
It has passed?
Yes.
Okay. Then I will go ahead and speak. I would like to have a little bit more than 1 minute. I've been working on this for nearly 12 years. It is unfair that I only get a minute. I was actually the appellant on the previous case. In the West LA Commission hearing, they found that the findings could not be made. And they also cited why they could not be made for the coastal development permit, but also for the reversion to acreage, that the findings, that the property is currently being used for public use and has future uses which the MTA even spoke up about. So I'm concerned that the public good is not being recognized here, and a compromise that has not been vetted, and actually your committee postponed this last week, hasn't given the neighborhood council an opportunity to speak on it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm actually the representative of the applicant and the appellant.
So tell me your name.
My name's Elisa Pastor. I'm here on behalf of Venice Investors. They're the applicant and of the reversion to acreage and the appellant.
So it's not going to be Chris Parker?
No, it's going to be me.
Got it. You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I do want to thank planning staff, council staff, and the city attorney's office. This case is a case that has been litigation for 7 years, and we've worked really hard to come to a compromise. This reversion to acreage was the suggestion of the city as part of our settlement talks, and we've gone through a long process. Since we started the reversion to acreage process, we have further compromised, modifying the map to ensure that there is public use for future street purposes. In addition, Juliet's already talked a little bit about there's going to be a widened sidewalk, there's going to be a landscape easement, we're going to have space for bike share, and there's going to be a 15-foot wide sidewalk. In addition, we're going to be providing a living decorative fence and landscaping, new paving and landscaping consistent with the Venice planting plan. And an easement will remain on a portion of the property so that if there is future public street uses, those can be utilized. There is going to be no loss of access to the coast here. The alternative in this case is for us to move forward with litigation. The court has already ruled that Venice Investors owns the land in question, and the court invalidated 3 of the 4 alleged easements on the property. If there was going to be in order to adjudicate who owns the last easement or whether the easement exists at all, a trial would be required. So the risk is that the city could lose the entire easement area, not just on our property, but along Venice Boulevard to the west. So this is a good compromise. It's a win-win for everyone, and we hope that you will approve the revised map. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Alexandra Balajudis. I've been a business owner in Venice since 2003, and I'm also a resident. My company, Strange Invisible Perfumes, is headquartered at 1656 Abbot Kinney. We also have a retail shop on Abbot Kinney. The request before you is not to take or use public land. It is to reverse several errors that were made on a map the city uses to show private and public land. The property will maintain the same number of parking spaces it has since the 1970s, which are actually fewer than the prior owner was using on this lot. The property owner has agreed to dedicate the area around the 9 palm trees on the corner of Abbot Kinney and Venice Boulevards for neighborhood use, so that community signage there will always be permitted, including the 4 palms that are on 1656 Abbot Kinney. They will also enhance landscaping on the street along Venice Boulevard, allow the city to widen the sidewalk, and to install a large bike share facility. This is a truly fair compromise. It's good for the property owner, the city, and most importantly for the Venice community. I support this and ask that you grant this reversion to acreage request. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That exhausts our public comment speakers, as well as the applicant and the appellant. So the chair recommends that we grant in part and deny in part the appeal filed by Chris Park on behalf of Venice Investors LLC relative to the West Los Angeles APC's denial determination and sustain the Director of Planning's approval of the tentative vesting tract map and coastal development permit for the property located at 1656 South Abbot Kinney Boulevard, and approve the mitigated negative declaration, mitigation measures, mitigation monitoring program, and related CEQA findings. Without objection, that'll be the order. And that takes us to our 6th and final
Yes,
agenda
Councilman.
item.
Item 6 is an appeal by Doug Haynes on behalf of La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association. He's appealing the action which related to the zoning administrator's approval of a zone variance for a health fitness studio in the C4 zone located in CD13.
All right. Good afternoon, honorable council members. I'm Jack John, Associate Zone Administrator, City Planning Department. The item before you is an appeal to a variance permitting Prevail Boxing, a health fitness company, to operate a new 3,700 square foot health club, offering fitness classes in tenant space on the ground floor of a 7-story mixed-use building located in the C4 zone. The mixed-use building consists of 507 residential units and 52,000 square feet of a ground floor commercial space. The frontage of a mixed-use building is on Hollywood Boulevard, while the proposed fitness studio fronts on the easterly side of Argyle Avenue. The building is a part of a larger development approved by City Planning Commission, case number CPC-2301 in 2007. The zone change entitlement of the case imposed a TQC4-2D-SN zone and a Q condition that limits the on-site uses to a C4 zone on the subject property. The Hollywood Community Plan designated the land use of development site as a regional center commercial. The general vicinity has become a new and diverse mixed-use district, and he has established a variety of services that cater to the needs of local residents and visitors in Hollywood. The appellant, Mr. Doug Haynes, appealed the variance to the Central Area Planning Commission on August 16, 2018. The Central Area Planning Commission sustained the zone administrator's decision. In determining this use variance, both the Central Area Planning Commission and the zone administrator found the variance finding can be made affirmative. The zone administrator would like to add further into the finding that most of the property in Hollywood have a land use designation of a regional center commercial, but this property has zone C4, which limits the full potential of the property use. The current TQC4-2D-SN zone adopted for the mixed-use development by the City Council in 2007 illustrates this exact situation. Now, with the rise of e-commerce, business activity and consumer demands have shifted away from various retail use allowed in C4 zones, such as soft goods and apparel, to service-oriented businesses, for instance, fitness, restaurant, and amusement enterprise. In addition, tenant space leased by the proposed fitness studio fronts on Argyle Avenue, which is a side street lacking the necessary visibility and foot traffic that most retail and restaurant demand. These two reasons have hindered applicants' efforts to lease a tenant space in the past, resulting in practical difficulty and necessary hardship. City has approved similar zoning action for the same health club used in Hollywood. This grants include a newly opened Equinox, a 24-hour fitness, 2-outlet fitness, and other health clubs. City's general plan and Hollywood Community Plan have goals, objective, and a policy that will support this variance, such as to further develop Hollywood as a major center of population, employment, retail service, entertainment, accommodate a broad range of uses that are compatible to adjacent land use, and enhance urban lifestyle, and to improve Angelino's health by zoning decisions. So lastly, since the project involves no construction, only a change of use, City issued a categorical exemption and determined that there is no substantial evidence demonstrating that exception to categorical exemption applies. This concludes the staff presentation. The planning staff recommends the Plan Committee to deny the appeal and sustain the Central Area Planning Commission's decision. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Haynes, are you present to present your appeal? Pardon me, Mr. Chung, can you just slide that middle chair over a little bit? The middle chair, no, the one you're in is fine. The middle chair, it blocks the clock. Very important. No, slide the middle, there you go. Boom. You're on it, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Haynes with Cla Report. With all due respect, the commentary just made has no relevance when it comes to the grant of a variance. There are 5 principal aspects to this appeal. The applicant, number 1, is restricted by the City Council's imposition in 2007 of the Q qualifying condition of approval that came with the zone and height district change. That Q condition limits the site to uses allowed in the C4 zone, and the C4 zone prohibits gymnasiums. 2, in 2017, the Chief Zoning Administrator issued a report that clarified that a boxing studio is a gym and is prohibited in the C4 zone. 3, any hardship in this case is totally self-imposed. 4, the applicant has presented no evidence that his 1.1 million square foot project isn't viable without the variance for a boxing gym. And 5, the project is not categorically exempt from CEQA. This appeal is about more than just another variance to allow a gym where the zoning prohibits, however. It's also about the planning department's pattern and practice of assuming your role as the elected legislative body when it comes to our zoning laws. In the city of Los Angeles, you can essentially buy any zoning you want through variances, adjustments, and conditional use permits. This case specifically involves the second phase of the Boulevard 6200 project, which received approval in 2007 for 1.13 million square foot development of over 1,000 apartment units and 175,000 square feet of commercial space. But it applies to numerous other cases as well where variances are granted without any real showing of hardship. The 2007 City Council approvals for Boulevard 6200 were contingent upon compliance with the T and Q conditions. The Q condition limited the site to only those uses allowed in the C4 zone, which prohibits gymnasiums, health clubs, and similar uses. A zoning administrator cannot circumvent the elected legislative body's restrictions. The zoning administrator has approved a boxing gym with exercise equipment, which has long been prohibited in the C4 zone. Also in 2017, Chief CA Charlie Rausch issued an official interpretation that citywide policy would continue to restrict gyms to only the C2 zone while defining fitness studio as, quote, yoga, Pilates, and other activities not involving exercise equipment, unquote. For activities using such equipment, the Chief CA stated, quote, those fitness-related uses that utilize equipment and machinery shall be correlated to a gymnasium or health club and shall remain in the C2 zone only, unquote. This edict was ignored even though the applicant has presented no financial evidence that his $500,000 project isn't viable without the variance for a boxing gymnasium, has also shown no evidence that any claimed hardship isn't totally self-imposed. Since 2007, the applicant has repeatedly received generous entitlements under the guise of suffering a hardship. In 2009, he was granted variances from the Hollywood Signage District for additional supergraphic and digital signage to be displayed throughout the project site. In 2014, he received a master CUP allowing 8 alcohol licenses for the northern part of the project. And in 2018, he received another master CUP allowing 9 alcohol licenses for the southern part of the project. In 2014, the applicant received 2 more variances to open 2 gyms in the northern half of the project, even though they are not allowed under the zoning. In each instance, therefore, the city has issued generous entitlements to benefit the property owner in a manner inconsistent with the restrictions of the area's zoning. Now the property owner has sought and received another variance to further extract additional value from the site. The purpose of a variance is to make the property equal to the surrounding properties and not to grant special privileges or permitted use that is inconsistent with other nearby properties. Those principles come from the State Government Code, the LA City Charter, and the LA Municipal Code. A variance is intended as a relief valve when there is a hardship that makes the land itself otherwise unusable, not the improvements on that land. The hardship must be upon the property and not a financial hardship claimed by the owner. In order to be entitled to a variance, the hardship must originate from circumstances beyond the control of the landowner and be of a type that does not generally affect other properties in the district. If the landlord can control the circumstances causing the hardship, then the granting of the variance is improper. No undue hardship is shown where the landlord could accomplish the same objective without a variance by changing his or her plans so that they conform to the existing zoning regs. Both the city charter and the municipal code require that a variance shall not be used to grant special privileges and that self-imposed hardships cannot justify the granting of a variance. Yet that as it was occurred here and it occurred a year ago when I came before you on a similar case. That went to court. And immediately the variance was tendered back because they knew they would lose in court. I'm trying to uphold your decision in this matter that variances are not permitted when it comes to gyms in the C4 zone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a representative of the applicant, Mr. Bowen. Bless you, Mr. Bowenfield.
Yes, Chair, Harris Dawson, members of the committee. My name's John Bowman. I represent the applicant, Boulevard 6200, owner South. As you've heard, this case involves a proposal to establish a specialty fitness use in a relatively small tenant space on the ground floor of the recently completed El Centro mixed-use project in Hollywood. This El Centro project, I might add, had really unprecedented support within the community at the time it was entitled in 2007. The case involves a variance for this use. All of the findings that are necessary to grant a variance can and in fact were made in this case by the zoning administrator. We believe those findings were amply supported by the evidence in the record. I would add also that this particular application for a variance was supported by the Central Hollywood Neighborhood Council as well as various other stakeholders in the community. In fact, the only opponent of the requested variance was the appellant, in this case, La Mirada. As we said, the findings in this case can be made. We think the findings made by the zoning administrator and upheld by the Area Planning Commission are sufficient to uphold a variance. We do recommend, however, one addition to those findings, and that addition is an additional paragraph that we outlined in Attachment A to the letter we submitted yesterday, dated March 4th. The zoning administrator, I believe, read some statements into the record which parallel that particular finding. We would ask specifically that the City Council consider amending the finding by adding that additional paragraph that we propose. That additional paragraph basically reflects what we believe are changes in the retail market with respect to brick and mortar retail, if you will, since the time this project was entitled in 2007. It also touches upon the challenges that we face in leasing this particular storefront to traditional retailers, in part because it is on a side street, doesn't have the visibility and foot traffic that most major retailers would require. So we think that will help round out the findings and would urge that that amendment be adopted. So with that, I would urge the committee to recommend denial of this appeal, sustain the decision of the zoning administrator with the amended finding as we have proposed. Although I'm the only one speaking today on behalf of the applicant, I do want to mention that I've got the entire applicant team here today, including Frank Stefan of Claret West Development, the developer of the El Centro project. We have Mike Reynolds here with us today. Mike Reynolds is with the Concord Group. Concord Group prepared a retail study, an analysis of the retail market in this area, which was submitted into the record and directly supports the findings for a variance in this case, as well as Jenny Chang, the broker who has been involved in leasing efforts on this project for the last several years. So among our team here, we're prepared and would be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. We have one public comment speaker, Casey Madron.
Hello, my name is Casey Madron. I'm a resident of Hollywood. I'm here to support the appeal. The city is ready to approve another zone variance here, and it's doing this well after environmental review has been completed. It's approved numerous entitlements for this project after the fact. In addition to this variance, it's also approved specific plan exceptions and 2 master CUPs for each phase of this project, totaling over 18 establishments that will serve alcohol. This makes a mockery of environmental review. It makes a mockery of zoning. I'd like to also add that the side street that the applicant is talking about here is actually highly frequented by people due to the a good deal of development that's gone on the side street in the surrounding area. So once again, I support the appeal. Once environmental review is done, we cannot continue to grant entitlements just because developers feel they need them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a representative from Council District 13, Mr. Bullock. Nope, can't do it. You got to sit down now. That's your first warning.
What is it about?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bullock.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Bullock, and I'm with Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell's office. The council member concurs with the Central Los Angeles Area Planning Commission in sustaining the zoning administrator's decision and denying the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any discussion? Hearing none, Chair recommends that we deny the appeal by Robert Silverstein on behalf of Doug Haynes and the La Mirada Neighborhood Association, and thereby sustain the CPC determination in approving a variance for the project located at 6150 West Hollywood Boulevard. Hearing no objection, that'll be the order. I believe the desk is clear, Mr. Mejia?
The desk is clear, Councilman.
Excellent. We're adjourned. Thank you all so much.